Hey, guitar playing champions! If you have ever stopped playing guitar for a while, a week, a month, a year, a decade, you've probably wondered how to regain your skills after the break from playing guitar. Hi, I'm Tom Hess, and today I teach you what to practice and how to practice after a long period away from the guitar so that you can restart your playing in the best way possible and avoid many mistakes people make when they try to get back into playing after not having played guitar for some period of time. So the first thing that we need to understand to get back into playing guitar and regain your skills, we need to know what are the skills that you are most likely to lose first when you take a break. So, the first skill you're likely to lose is endurance, the ability to play at whatever is a pretty fast speed for you over long periods of time. Endurance is the first thing to go. The second thing is just overall guitar speed. The third are the calluses on your fingertips. Now, losing the calluses, even partly the softening of the calluses, creates many problems when you're trying to get back into playing guitar. And I don't mean that, well, your fingers are a little bit sore because you haven't been playing. The sore fingers is the least of your problems. What happens is that when the calluses change, when they get a little softer or more soft or they go away entirely, the synchronization between the two hands is completely wiped out. That means that you're not able to synchronize the hands in the same way you were before. Why? Because your brain has learned in the past what the feeling should be when you're playing your guitar. It understands the feeling when you're picking notes. It understands the feeling of pressing down the fret, how far you have to press, how much power you have to use, the speed of the motion, and it synchronizes all of that. Those are things that you've learned already. But once the calluses change, even a little bit, that throws off what your brain knows in terms of synchronization. So it's not that you've really lost the mental capacity to synchronize your hands, is that you now have a physical limitation which doesn't match with what your brain knows. The next thing you're likely to lose is bending strings and doing vibrato in tune. And again, why? Because the calluses will have either gone away partly or softened or gone away completely. So now the amount of power, the amount of force that you need to use when bending a string or doing vibrato will be different to bend the string or move the string to the exact same amount. So the intonation, the ability to move the string in tune, will be different because now you need to use more force, more power to move the string the same amount that you used to be able to move the string with less power. Now you need to use more power because you don't have the calluses and the strings are digging into the fingertips. And the next thing that you're likely to lose after you take a break from playing guitar is simply timing. Okay, your brain starts to lose a little bit of the rhythm in getting everything in perfect time. So I'm not talking about two-hand synchronization, which we just talked about a minute ago. I'm talking about simply playing anything in perfect time. You lose a little bit of this sense. You don't lose it totally, but it will be weakened over time. So those are the things you're likely to lose, and that's kind of the order that you're likely to lose them in. So if you take a break for just 2 or 3 days, you're not losing a lot. But if you take a break for a week, a month, or longer, you're likely to lose at least part of all of these things. So now you know what things are likely to be lost first, and now we can attack those things to determine what we need to work on and how to approach them. Now, over the last 3+ decades, I have taught thousands of students, and sometimes those students take breaks, or I'll get a new student who maybe hadn't been playing guitar for a while, took a long break, and now he wants to start up lessons with me or whatever, and he's trying to get back into playing, regain skills he used to have, and then build upon that. And what happens is that after students take breaks, they often get frustrated because they know and they can feel that the technique that they have doesn't match what it used to be at some point in the past before taking the break. And what they do, and when the mistake that's often made is they try to push. They push themselves forward. They push the technique. And what happens is they fatigue very soon. It means their hands, usually in their fretting hand and their picking arm, their forearm and their picking hand, tend to get tired very easily. So the first thing that you want to recognize is that, number one, yeah, that's going to happen. You will fatigue easily after a long break from playing guitar. But fatigue is going to be the enemy of you regaining your technique for the first several days or a week or two. So don't push. Don't think, you know what, I'm going to sit down for an hour and I'm going to push myself and I'm going to force myself to regain this technique. That's a mistake. If you do that, as your hands and your forearm here get fatigued, it will make it harder for you to regain the technique. You don't want to push yourself for the first week or maybe 2 weeks or even more if the break is really long. Okay, that's not what you want to do. You can play fast in short little bursts. So short bursts, short practice sessions. Don't sit down for an hour and just try to push and grind it out. That's not a good idea. 10 minutes playing, slow stuff, medium speed. But as soon as you feel fatigue in either hand or either arm, stop. You're not helping yourself at that point for where you are in the process. Short little practice sessions, short little bursts of speed when you are going to play a little faster. We don't want to let fatigue set in. So, what should you do if you're thinking to yourself, you know, I've got a bunch of time to practice, but I was just told not to practice a whole lot, not to practice very fast, and not to push. What else can I do with the time you have practicing? Great question. Well, one thing that you might do is you might recall before taking a break from playing guitar, you may have had some bad habits along the way. Now, in this moment, is a great opportunity to learn how to fix those bad habits and to do really slow practice, slow training to overhaul whatever technique you may have been doing in an incorrect or inefficient or ineffective way. You can't really play fast for long anyway, so use the opportunity to fix bad habits or bad technique that might need to be fixed. The next thing that you can do in this period is to learn a new skill or new technique where playing fast for you in this moment is totally impossible at this point because it's new to you. If something is new, you likely couldn't play it fast even if you had your guitar skills because it's a brand new thing. You're still learning it. You're still trying to get the hang of it. So learning new techniques is a good idea because you're going to start off playing it slow anyway, which is exactly what we want to do after we're coming back from a break from playing guitar. All right, now let's talk about what to do with your fretting hand. And again, when you're trying to regain your skills after taking a break from guitar, we don't want to rush things and play really fast right now, so we're going to keep the tempo slow. But here's a huge mistake that people make when they practice something slow. They use lazy movements in their fretting hand. For example, if you practice with the metronome and you set the metronome at a really slow speed, let's say 40 beats per minute or 60 beats per minute, that's pretty slow. And if you're playing quarter notes or eighth notes, you've now got a lot of time in between each note, right? And because you have a lot of time, it's very common for people to make the mistake of letting the fingers move in a lazy way. So we don't want to move in a lazy way. We want the fingers to move very quick and very fast, but there's just a long period in between each note. So if your first note is going to be played here at this point in time, and the next note's going to be played here at this point in time, you want to move the finger, whichever finger is going to play the first note, you want to move it fast. Play the note, let the note sustain, because we're not playing a bunch of notes quickly. It's a fast movement to play that note. You let the note sustain, and then when it's time to play the second note, fast, sharp, quick, lightning fast movement on that second note. You let that note sustain, then the same thing for the third note. Fast, quick movement. We don't want the fingers to get lazy. Okay, so it's quick movements. Even if there's a lot of time between the notes, we don't want this. Fingers moving slow. That's not what we're looking to do for this type of practice. Now, there is a time when it does make sense to have the fingers move very slowly. There is a time for that, but this is not that time. Now, the next thing you can work on for your fretting hand when you're trying to regain your guitar skills after a long break from playing guitar is the instantaneous transfer of motion from one finger to the next. So if we were going to play, let's say, these two notes with these two fingers, we first play this note, and we want that to be lightning fast. When it's time to play that note, we play it. Sharp movement, okay? Now, when this finger is going to play the next note, we want this to also be a sharp, crisp movement, and at the same time, we want that finger to come off at precisely the same time. So the transfer of from one finger to the next happens simultaneously. Okay, so let me show you like this. The two fingers move together. They move quick. They move sharp. There's a lot of time in between the movements, but they move together. One finger comes down, the other one comes off at precisely the same time. Now, I know this is probably not earth-shattering or new to you. You probably already know this information. But it doesn't matter if you know it. It only matters if you do it, and if you do it consistently, and if you do it when practicing at slow tempos. Because again, what most people do is they get really lazy when they practice something really slow. And then what happens is later on, when you speed up the tempo, you find, oh, I can't play fast. Playing fast is really hard. Yeah, because when you practice slow, the motions were not quick and crisp, and the finger transfer wasn't synchronized between the two fingers. Okay? The laziness that you put in slow practice makes practicing at higher speeds later really hard. All right, now, before you speed up the tempo, before you start thinking, you know what, I think I'm ready to start going a little faster, my arms, my hands are not fatiguing, I think I can push up the speed a bit, before you do that, please make sure that you are fully and thoroughly warmed up. I've got a great video on YouTube that will teach you exactly how to do this. The video is called Guitar Warm-Up Exercises Step-by-Step Tutorial. Go check out that video and then come back and finish the rest of this one. Now let's talk about the picking hand and regaining the skills in the picking hand and the picking arm after you've taken a long time or a long break away from playing guitar. So again, we don't want fatigue to set in. We don't want you to get tired in the early days or even the first 2 or 3 weeks after a long break. You need to kind of ease back into it. So what I'm going to recommend for you to do is basically two things for the picking hand and the picking arm. The first is to focus on the economy of motion. Economy of motion. That means taking your eyes and staring at the pick and at the picking hand. You can ignore totally the fretting hand. Ignore that. Just focus on what it looks like when the pick is moving, either on the same string or when you're changing strings. Okay, if you're using directional picking or alternate picking, whatever technique you're using, we want the motions, the distance between how far the pick needs to travel to be as small as it can be and still get good articulation, okay? We don't want big arching motions like this. We don't want the pick or the picking hand or the arm to move any more than we need it to move in order to get the sound we want, Okay, so the way to work on this, if you're doing it on your own, is to just watch your picking hand, take it slow, and really look at the movements. Look at the motions. Does it look efficient to you? Can we make that motion smaller? Can we make the trajectory of how the pick moves? Can we make it go in a straight line instead of an arc like this or swooping down like this, to pick strings? The more we can get it to go in a straight line, the more economical the motion will be, the less energy you will use, and the greater the speed potential will become. Now, the second thing to think about or to focus on for the picking hand and the picking arm are short little bursts of speed. Okay? There's nothing wrong with playing fast, practicing fast at this stage. What we're not trying to avoid speed. What we're trying to do is avoid fatigue, because we're not trying at this point, for what we're doing now, we're not trying to build endurance. If you were training to build endurance, what I would recommend to do would be completely different than what I'm going to tell you to do right now. The purpose of this video is just to regain the skills that you had lost previously, not endurance skills, just raw technical skills. Okay, so you do little short bursts of speed. You can do it with one hand only or hands together, whatever. Short little bursts, maybe 4 notes at a time, 3 notes at a time, 6 notes, 8 notes, something like that. Not much longer. And you're looking for a nice, clean, crisp, accurate tone, good articulation, good synchronization, good timing, good speed. But we don't want to continue with longer licks and have fatigue set in. If it sets in, you got to stop, because you're risking injury. And it doesn't even make sense to work on endurance at this point, because we're just trying to regain raw skill. We're not trying to extend the skill through endurance after a long break from playing guitar. The next area to focus on is two-hand synchronization, getting the two hands synced together. However, there's a warning here. Please be careful. Do not try to develop your two-hand synchronization, to regain the two-hand sync skills, before the calluses on your fretting hand have fully come back, fully hardened to what they used to be. Okay? Because if you try to develop two-hand synchronization and you have not regained the calluses, you are completely wasting your time. Why are you wasting your time? Because two-hand synchronization has very little to do with either hand. It all occurs in your brain. Okay? Your brain learns how to move the hands together, get feedback from how it feels and how it sounds, but mostly how it feels. And the feeling will change when the calluses are soft or hard. Okay? So, as you have soft calluses, if you start trying to develop the two-hand synchronization, and then later on, in a few days, in a week, in 2 or 3 weeks, the calluses get harder, everything you just trained your brain to learn is garbage. You've got to go relearn it all over again, because the amount of force that now you need to use for your fretting hand will be less. You will need to push down less hard. You need to push the finger down not as far, because there's less resistance of your fingertip against the string. Okay? That means less power and less distance that the bone inside your finger needs to go down to compress the soft part of the finger. Because as the fingertip is soft, you need to compress more of it to push the string down. Your brain is paying attention to that and trying to synchronize the right hand to the amount at which that bone is traveling towards the fingerboard. Okay? As the callus gets thicker and harder, you don't need to move the finger quite as much. You don't need to move it quite with as much power, and your brain now learns that. So, develop the calluses first, then once they're fully developed again, that's when you focus on the two-hand synchronization. Don't do it before, or you will waste all that practice time in terms of the synchronization of the two hands. Okay, so as you've probably figured out by now, Once you get back into playing guitar and you're trying to regain the skills and restart your guitar playing after a break, only a small limited amount of time is going to be dedicated towards getting the technical skills back. Because number one, we don't want to play with fatigue, so the sessions have to be shorter. And two, we're still waiting for the calluses to come back, and we don't want to try to work on two-hand synchronization before that happens. So what do you do with the rest of the practice time you might have if we're not going to focus real hard on technique right now? Well, here are some ideas. One, you can focus on non-technical things, non-speed skills. So here are some examples. You might focus on your ear training, or learning more about music theory, or learning how to apply the music theory you may already know. You may focus on practicing your songwriting, which is not the same as actually writing songs. You might focus on chord playing, chord changes, chord shapes and inversions and voicings on the guitar that maybe you've forgotten, maybe you want to refresh, maybe you want to learn new ones. You might focus on your improvisational skills, your phrasing, okay? You may focus more on the mental side of guitar playing and music and being a musician. You might explore things and go deeper into the things that you know or are learning. You might decide you want to tie up loose ends, this little piece and that little piece and that little thing, but you can't yet tie it all together because maybe you don't have the ability yet to integrate the skills that you had or have or are learning. So this might be a good opportunity to focus on any of those things in the remaining practice time you have when you're not focused on technical things. Today, we've been talking a lot about what to do, how to practice, what to practice after a long break from playing guitar. And one of the common problems that guitar players have when they're trying to do this is that they play with way too much tension. And tension kills and limits guitar speed potential, as well as other skills as well. Now, there are 9 types of tension that guitar players typically suffer from. Some people have all 9. Others have just a few, but most players have about 6 on average. But they may only be aware of 1 or 2 of the 6 that they typically have. And that's what keeps them stuck. Now, I have a free online training masterclass for you called Total Guitar Playing Tension Control. In this free training, I reveal how to improve your guitar technique, speed, and fluency much faster. How? By identifying all 9 types of tension and showing you exactly how to overcome them all so that you can finally get on the fast track to playing guitar the way that you want. Now, during this video masterclass, totally free, by the way, you're going to discover how many of the 9 types of tension that you may have and how to eliminate them one by one. Then I'm going to train you to actually improve in all the areas of these 9 so that tension doesn't creep its way back into your playing ever again, which will help you become a much better guitar player much more quickly than ever before. So for a limited time, this is totally free to you. No strings attached. It's about an hour long, maybe a little longer. Go to my website, tomhess.net/total-tension-control. You'll be glad that you did.